The value of a place is often judged by how much it's been fought over. And we have fought over this many times before. We fought to save Currawong. We threw Baywatch off Avalon Beach. I hope that's the only film crew they throw off beaches. We fought valiantly to save Mona Vale Hospital. Now, wouldn't a hospital be handy right there? They're going to put all these people in there. Yeah, and what a courageous fight that was. And we loved it so much, this place so much, we fought at one stage to secede. So that's how much we love our area. But enough from me. We've got some wonderful speakers, and can we please put your hands together to welcome JACQUI SCRUBY. Thank you.
I'm here to tell you what I've observed in Parliament, what I consider the situation to be, and it's ever evolving. I've had a couple of shocks with some state significant developments recently as well. But I'm not here just to tell you what you want to hear. I'm here to inform you, to be honest with you, and for us to continue to mobilise and, as others have said, bring more people into the fold, because this isn't going to be a one-off event. I'm happy to condemn the Minns government on this pro-developer stance, but I've also got to condemn the Liberal Party, the Libertarians, and others in New South Wales Parliament who continue to support this. And the Liberals have been very open that this is bipartisan reform. And they have voted for this. And they have, numerous times, not just when the legislation passed to create the biggest planning reforms in 50 years, which happened late last year, but also recently, the member for Wakehurst, Michael Regan, put forward a bill. Look, his impetus was what we've discussed today, the bushfire risk, but also particularly for Lizard Rock, doing everything he can to make sure that development doesn't go ahead. There was an opportunity for members to vote in support of the RFS having a significant and overarching say in whether development should be going ahead based on bushfire risk, and both Labor and Liberals voted that down. And that to me says that this is not just pro-development and pro-developer, but it's really development at any cost. And we've heard today it's at a cost to our community, our character, our way of life, and all the other aspects, but it's also even at any cost in terms of risks such as bushfire risk, and we know also building on floodplains, and that all impacts insurance, which has economic, I could go on and on about that issue. But we are seeing doubling down of support for these reforms in New South Wales Parliament constantly. Even last night, the opposition leader was pushing the government to go further with housing and saying they're going to relax taxes for developers to make it easier and cheaper to develop, and criticising the Minns government for not developing enough houses in this time. So I just want to be very clear that that is why this is a David and Goliath battle, because people have been critical of me, saying, you haven't stopped things, you haven't stopped this. I'm one person out of about 3 or 4 in the Legislative Assembly who are actually opposing this. So although we have a minority government, if you have an opposition who's not opposing, 1, 2, 3 people in a House of 93 can't make the changes we need to change. So going to the point about there's an election coming up, community pressure, we need to keep putting pressure on. And can one person make a difference? Well, I just gave the example of Parliament and saying how hard it is, but on the flip side, 1, 2, 3 people having a strong and continued voice is the only thing, together with community mobilisation, that will flip this. We've seen it in the past with Part 3A of the planning reforms getting flipped, and unfortunately, as more and more people become aware and see developments, we will get more people come into the fold. By way of example, when the low to mid-rise was put out for consultation, I wasn't an MP. I was just I was going to say a normal person, but maybe I wasn't even a normal person. But I wasn't an MP. But I was on every Facebook group, Mona Vale, Avalon, alerting people to make submissions, and I probably used quite inflammatory language, because Mona Vale was not the only one on that list. There were 5 on the list, potential low to mid-rise centres, including Avalon, Newport, Narrabeen. And I was really concerned. I got a couple of thumbs up, no comments, and I honestly doubt whether people made submissions. But as we can see now, it's just human nature. As we start to see the impacts, this community will grow, and the pressure on the major parties will grow as well. So like we were able to defeat Part 3A, I'm sure that there will be a point in the future where we are able to defeat it. So my key message is keep going. This is just the beginning, unfortunately, but keep going. And, you know, we can take these types of protests to Parliament House, on the steps of Parliament House. We can join with other communities, including, you know, I know Mossman's very upset. There are other communities that are very upset, and join with those. And I know there's a change.org petition, which is fabulous for gaining, you know, you need email addresses, but there are also parliamentary petitions as well to get this issue back debated in Parliament, because we do need to maintain that pressure. Look, for me, low to mid-rise here, we're saying no to 6 to 8 stories. People would have watched Four Corners and the furphy that is the affordable housing. There's another issue there that I brought up a number of times around New South Wales having only a 75% trigger if there's a strata renewal scheme, where someone who doesn't want to sell can be forced to sell their apartment. And that's different from other states and territories. And I have said to people, so going to the point about writing to me, personal stories are so important. So I know all the general stories. I've written, you know, the first thing I did when I was elected was to fight these town centre reforms, and I was reflecting on the letter that I did as a follow-up to Paul Scully after our meeting, and it's a lot of the things that were spoken about, the lack of infrastructure, whether that be, you know, the wastewater treatment. At that stage we hadn't had Mona Vale Road be fully funded and the green light yet, so it was Mona Vale Road. It was also the things that can't be overcome, the fact that we're a peninsula, one road in, one road out, the bushfire risk, and I was in LA when the bushfire kicked off, so it is very real how that can go from not just up in the bush but actually into urban areas really quickly. I've got all that, but what I don't have are these personal stories from how these things are impacting you. And I had said before, the best thing that the media would want are these personal stories. And so Four Corners was a really good example of that, where they had these personal stories of someone who had been forcibly removed from their apartment. And it really highlights what we all know is true, which is some of these reforms don't even make sense. So if we're replacing an apartment block with multiple apartments with the effectively, you know, penthouse style apartments, we actually have net less housing. The same with the affordable housing furphy, if the way it's based at the moment. In areas like ours, it's just still not affordable for key workers. So the list goes on, but in terms of contacting me, you know, those personal stories are really important, and I'm happy to do media and help organise media as well. We have seen things flip, so I gave the planning example, but, you know, PEP 11 was something that, you know, I was campaigning on. I wrote a piece of draft legislation, I was standing there on my own, and suddenly something flipped, and the Liberal Party did their press conference, adopted that legislation and ran with it. Awesome result. So we need to get one of the major parties to flip, but we also can't lose the voices who are against this reform. And as I mentioned, it's pretty much me, Michael Regan, and 2 Greens members who have been vocal against these reforms. The other thing we need to acknowledge is that there's no planning in this planning. And so I know I've just said the low to mid-rise 6 to 8 stories, but we have state significant developments which were tools in the past for things like hospitals, nursing homes, things to bring significant state significant and value to a community. They're now being used just as a free-for-all for developers. So almost, and I go to this sort of perverse outcome, almost the LMR is a perverse outcome when you're going to allow state significance developments to be declared not only in the low to mid-rise centre that exceed the 6 to 8 stories, but also in areas that were considered not appropriate for low to mid-rise, and now they're having SSDs declared. So there's a lot of things that are perverse around this, and the core thing is that there is no planning. We have the Sydney plan and regional plans under review at the moment. I have written a submission on that, and it goes to a lot of what we've said is when we zoom out and not just think about why we love Pittwater, but we think about Sydney. I don't want a Sydney that's just generic with high rises wherever a developer decided to put in an SSD and suburbs that are disjointed with no character and no planning. And I want a Sydney that's well planned. We are a beautiful, beautiful city. We are one of the most beautiful major cities in the Southern Hemisphere. We need to have proper planning. Now that Sydney plan hasn't been finalised. I encourage everyone to go and have a look. It's a bunch of motherhood statements and not much detail there. But the thing that stuck out to me, that there's no strategic planning about beautiful different regions. If you're lucky enough to have travelled, you know straight away the cities that do planning well and the cities that have just absolutely done a shocking job of planning. And in all those cities, even in built-up areas like, you know, south of France, for instance, there are cities and then there are areas on peninsulas that are preserved. There are other terrible, I mean, the south of Turkey, since their earthquakes, have rebuilt and have 6-storey buildings just lining the streets everywhere, and half of them are abandoned because the developers haven't even completed them. So we need proper planning, and we can't just have a free-for-all. And when, you know, I get criticism of you weren't able to stop it, well, no, but I'm sure, I was going to swear then. So I was going to say, my dad's there. I'm sure as hell, not the other word I was going to say, going to keep fighting to stop it. And to be fair, we had 5 on the list and we have 1 declared. We have, over the LGA as a total, we have 9. So down the southern end of our LGA, the Northern Beaches Council LGA, there are 8 low to mid-rise centres. And I've got to be honest, in the moment when I found that out, it was a huge sigh of relief, and I know that's not helpful for Mona Vale. It doesn't mean I'm like appalled that we have Mona Vale as a low to mid-rise, but I was genuinely terrified we were going to have 5 declarations. Genuinely terrified. As was the former member for Pittwater, Rory Amon, because in his communications and media releases, he was also concerned it was going to be 5. So when people say I haven't stopped it, I campaigned and went into Paul Scully, one of the first days having been elected, I think it was before I was even sworn in, putting forward to him all the things that we've spoken about today, from infrastructure, bushfire risk. I'm not going to stand here and say it was definitely that, it was definitely not that, but all I can say is that, as previous people have mentioned, there hasn't been a lot of planning when it came to low to mid-rise. There was a lot of just 171 circles on the map across New South Wales. So lobbying does matter, and I've been lobbying in meetings, providing almost, you know, sort of PowerPoint presentations of all the risks, and particularly those risks such as in 2060, our local government area of the Northern Beaches will have the highest rate of average annual losses from extreme weather. So that's not just bushfire, that's flooding, coastal erosion. So all these things I continue to talk about, not only on the floor of Parliament, but in meetings, in media, and my commitment is I will continue to do so. And I hope all of you will come to a protest outside Parliament House. And I mean, I know we've got empty seats here, but it's a lot harder to have an excuse that you can't come down and talk to a protest if Parliament's sitting and you're actually there. You don't need to get a bus all the way up to Mona Vale and travel a great distance. Because as we know, we have moved up here and we are on the fringe of Sydney for a reason. Because we're in a special area and we've chosen to move away from the city. And therefore, while we have, and I totally accept we need planning and development, and we have developed, particularly I was looking at photos from 1950 up here, very, very different. We are developing, but it should be in line with the planning scheme. And that planning scheme, and we have the new LEP, the new Local Environment Plan, up for consultation at the moment. But that has been done with community, for community. And then when you move into a house, you can look up the zoning next door and have confidence, okay, well, this is the risk I'm taking. It could go to 4 stories. At the moment, everyone is just being ambushed from left, right and centre in regards to what we can expect in the next coming years in terms of development here. The final thing I'll say is just to reiterate the importance of bringing people next time, of continuing to be involved. And have a relationship, email my office, I'll keep you posted on what I'm doing. By all means, hold me to account. But at the same time, I'm not going to stand here and tell you, look, everything's going to be great. I honestly think we actually have quite a big fight on our hands. But I'm willing to, you know, absolutely be speaking in Parliament on this issue, being part of protests. And we do need a major party to flip on this. How that looks and what it looks like will evolve, and I'm very interested to see if we can make gains with the Sydney plan, because the finalisation of that plan hasn't been made, just the draft is there. But we do need some point where we have a major party either completely opposing this whole approach to development, which would be great, and if not that, looking at areas of Sydney like Mona Vale and saying, no, this is not appropriate for here, reversing the low to mid-rise, and also putting a very big stop on state significant developments for housing that are completely misaligned with existing planning controls. So thank you everybody. Happy to take questions at the end.